Welcome on in to the Fantasy Football Forge. My name's Steve, and today we're going to be looking at Zero RB. Who are the best running backs in Zero RB? And I created this sheet. If it ends up being something that you think you could benefit from, that you would want access to, let me know in the comments, and I'll save this after. I don't have it saved yet. I'll save it after the video, and that way, if you do have interest in it, I can figure out a way to get it out to you. Probably gonna have to put it in a spreadsheet and then publish it and give you the link to it. So, Zero RB, the best running backs in Zero RB. I have the list currently formatted so you can see the order from ADP. So we're looking at running backs ADP 60 or below off the board, because that's typically what Zero RB means, is that you're not drafting until at the earliest that point in the draft, and it's kind of lets us touch both on 12 team and 10 team in terms of where that number would lie at 60. So that's where we go. Over here in this column, I just have the round that is represented by, just another way to kind of get a good grasp on where these things go. We'll get into this stuff from all these numbers that are highlighted with various colors in a short bit. But first, I just want to look at, who are the no-brainer Zero RB running backs for the most part, because they are the starter or highly likely to be the starter, or, at least the lead in a shared backfield. Or in a couple of instances, maybe they're like Ramondre Stevenson, they're currently the starter. They're expected to start the season as the starter. Will that remain? Who knows for sure? But in a Zero RB type of space, I think that those are good running backs to have. Let's go down to Rachaad White, Austin Ekeler. I just think they give you a nice enough receiving floor, and most likely in the case of Rachaad White, almost certainly in the case of Austin Ekeler, they also have a role that is pretty consistently there, game in and game out, that provides you a fantasy floor essentially due to that. And, it doesn't help that they're at least on playoff teams, I think by most people's expectations. So those are some of the reasons for the lower ones. But up here, David Montgomery, Travion Henderson, DeAndre Swift, I think Caleb Johnson, Aaron Jones, Tony Pollard, Isaiah Pacheco probably, I believe. These are all guys, Brian Robinson, probably Travis Etienne, who have for the most part, the lead role in their offenses. Oftentimes some solid offenses here, whatever the case. In Zero RB, these are the kind of guys that you definitely want to get your hands on, one or two of them if you can. And you can if you start attacking their early round 6 to late round 5 to early round 7, you could get your hands on two of these, which would be pretty nice. So there's definite opportunity to make Zero RB almost certainly work if the draft works well enough in your favor with these guys. Other than that, in this row, I think these are going to get to values, which do have something to do with, where the player is getting drafted, and ultimately their, what I called it a strength score, whatever the case may be, the ultimate score from these categories. So let me just explain very briefly what these are. Obviously, to begin with, a 2 is good. The higher the strength score here, the better. So this is on a scale of 0 to 2. Essentially, yes, no, maybe so, is the most basic idea for these. But obviously, do they have a floor? Yes, there's more nuance to it than just yes or no. But for the starter, a 2 was, they are the starter. And there's really zero question about it. No, if I gave them a 1, they have a significant share in a shared backfield, or the starter is yet to be determined. For the most part, those are the reasons for 1. And a 0, they are not the starter in their backfield, or at least not expected to be, especially without any kind of injury or anything. For the second column here, we have the floor. Gave them a 2 if they are a player who I feel does have a nice, a solid floor to work from. There are I'll say within all of these, there are Venn diagrams. There is some crossover from one to another to some extent. This is not perfectly objective, but I tried to keep it quite objective. Again, a number one if the floor is uncertain, and then a zero if there is no significant guaranteed workload for those players. Like a Quinshon Judkins with all that stuff going on, there's no guarantee he plays this year at this point in time. Tyrone Tracy, I believe, has a very legitimate contender who I believe will be the starting running back in Cam Scadaboo there as well. So, he's one of those guys who was on the borderline of a 1 or a 0, but I kept this pretty straightforward, so I ended up landing on a 0 for him. You can disagree with that, and I would understand. For the next column, we've got upside, obviously not the opposite of floor, but, what does that upside look like? Typically, I was thinking, for the most part, of like 3 things while doing this, but some other factors would come into play for some specific players, and there was an element of like relative to their specific situation as well. The 3 things that I was primarily thinking of was like the player's potential talent level, the proven talent that they've had if they've played in the league previously, and then the strength of the team that they're on. Just talked about this in a recent video, the last Friday's video, where I looked at a bunch of different articles and news and stuff coming out, over the last week in regards to football and for the most part fantasy football related there, or at least making it fantasy football related. And there is a correlation. It is intuitive for good NFL teams having better running back production for fantasy purposes. Put it that simply. Then we've got these other 3 categories. So this is some sort of measure of like what we know coming into the season. And here's like a measure of potential in a different sense to some varying degrees. So for the injury, poor odds, and threat categories here, once again, to varying degrees, these are measures of the likelihood that they'll be able to meet their floors, at least is part of it, and also to have meet their upsides and their ceilings, and looking at things like is an injury needed in order for them to reach their potential for fantasy purposes, in order for them to be startable in fantasy football. Are they the running back 1, 2, or 3 on their team's roster? What's the likelihood that an incumbent on the roster would take their role from them if they were the number 2 last year? Are they safe, or did the team draft a guy high up in the draft, or maybe draft a guy who I liked quite a bit in the draft, even if they weren't very high? And, how talented of a running back have they proven to be so far in the league? Those are the kinds of things looking at. Other miscellaneous beliefs based on specific situations for individual players. Once again, not fully objective here with all of these gradings. And regardless of how good the opportunity for them may be, what is the chance that they can live up to that opportunity or get that opportunity? Those are the things that really ultimately went into these 3 scores that they got for these groups. So now I am going to reformat this in order of the strength score. We're going to look at some of the values that that offers us, some of the risks, avoids, definite avoids, those kinds of things. So the good thing right off the bat is that the players who had a high strength score here also tend to be like the more obvious choices in general. Now, some of them are going later than the others, generally speaking here, especially given the strength score. Sorry, I just got distracted by Ramondre Stevenson, almost feeling like he could have been highlighted here. All right, you know what? I'm thinking about this too hard. I just highlighted Ramondre Stevenson. It is what it is here. So, out of the strength scores that were above 10, Brian Robinson is the one that goes the latest out of this group. So, obviously, I think that there is some good potential there. I mean, this is a guy who is the starter in his backfield. I think he comes with a very good floor. It is a good team that he's on, and that usage is fairly guaranteed. There's not like a whole lot of concern elsewhere on the roster to take away that usage. Their RB2, Austin Eckler, isn't going to take away his role. And so all that's good. The upside is a little bit limited. Not really a receiving back is definitely a part of that. And just his talent level. He's not the most talented of all running backs. But he doesn't need an injury in front of him or anything like that. He is quite the safe pick. And you can get him later, significantly later, really, if you look at the actual ADP there, than all of these other guys. So I think that he represents a nice value. Same with ETN, Ramondre Stevenson, Austin Eckler, for how late you can get him. I mean, his role is fairly guaranteed. There really is not any kind of threat to it. It is a role that is going to remain in this offense. He's not going to, I would think he should get somewhat a similar amount of workload than he did last season. And especially for zero RB purposes, that can give you a nice, I would say, floor. Get a little bit of upside because of his talent, I suppose. It's not the highest floor. It's not the most talent, but it is something that is bankable, I would say, for zero RB purposes. And that's what makes him, I believe, a little bit of a better value there. Now, in this next group, we're still in like the good territory in terms of the strength score. Received a 7 or an 8 here. I have Nick Chubb highlighted, Tyler Algier, Zach Moss, somebody you can get not even going drafted in most league formats there. I think probably underestimating his role. I will say, coming back from the injury, there is a little bit of uncertainty there. How well Chase Brown did last season once he left. He probably doesn't quite resume the same role that he had last season. But I do think that he comes in with, I think he'll probably have a role like the opposite of what Austin Eckler's is for the groundwork, which is less significant, harder to produce from. But also, he's a guy who, if there is an injury, that's going to be a really good offense to be the lead running back on. And as this number would represent, I don't really think there's much of a doubt that if Chase Brown were to go down, that Zach Moss would not be that next running back up. Tyler Algier, it's kind of a similar thing. You can see the scores actually across the board are the same, I would say, as you can see from the drafting too. Subjectively, a little bit of a better floor, generally speaking, for him and everything. And if there's an injury, that should be a good enough team, and he has in the past proven that he can be like an RB2 for you just fine. And then Nick Chubb is a guy who you might not agree with my analysis on him, but I think it's hard to deny that the upside does exist for a talent like Nick Chubb, one of the best running backs in the league in very recent history. Reasons to doubt that ability. But also, I feel very comfortable, hopefully, that he is going to have a role that's going to offer him a floor. Not the highest floor, but man, I mean, it gets limited with Joe Mixon, of course, regardless of if he's actually the RB1 or something like that, like where I'm almost kind of projecting him to be there. But yeah, great opportunity. Ray Davis feels a little bit out of place compared to some of these other ones, so that's part of the reason I'm sure why I didn't highlight him there. But good opportunities here. I want to jump to a slightly different topic here with Javonte Williams and where is Jaden Blue? There you are. All right, so now that we've gotten to Javonte Williams here, I heard a report coming out of Dallas that Jaden Blue, there are reports that people aren't really too happy with him, laziness, not trying hard enough, I assume at practice and outside of practice. He has a golden opportunity here coming into Dallas to potentially become a lead running back. So that makes that all the worse. And that gives me a little bit more faith in Javonte Williams winning that lead role, because I am someone who was legit concerned about that. I think Jaden Blue is a really good talent. and gives me less faith in Jaden Blue. Worst case scenario, just being a really good, Austin Eckler, like a really good receiving back for this Dallas offense, which might be playing from behind enough throughout the season. So, just a little bit of news on those two, some concerns. That's going to bring us these yellow groups once we get into this territory. These are players who are being taken like, I don't want to call them bad values, because here's the other thing about value. You don't need value. You need good players. You are already making the position a value position. So to get a value on a value, it doesn't necessarily matter. You still want, David Montgomery more than Tyrone Tracy or Cam Scadaboo. And the likelihood that these guys become more fantasy relevant has just lowered based on the strength score that they received. So we're kind of in a middling territory where these are, in a sense, they're not guys I'm avoiding. We're not in avoid territory. It's just like yellow flag. Let's call them, these are the yellow flags here. I guess maybe that's why I gave them a yellow color. So Tyrone Tracy, once again, Cam Scadaboo, business going on there. Concerns me. His fumbling stuff concerns me. Not on the greatest offense that there will be throughout the season in New York. That concerns me. And for other reasons, nothing is guaranteed for Cam Scadaboo. This is definitely a bit of a toss-up. I have faith in, believe in, think that Cam Scadaboo will be the one that comes out as the lead back, and I think he'll be pretty good in fantasy, especially just overall in terms of value. But I have to be realistic about it, and when you look at this floor, especially here, recognize that there is zero guarantee to that. And then we have Najee Harris in this group, Zach Charbonnet. Just think they're getting taken near, and it's not like I'm crazy low. Actually, Zach Charbonnet, I think I've gotten closer to ADP in my rankings since my avoids video and whatnot. So once again, this isn't like a fade on these guys. Just a little bit like, hey, if I can get Rachaad White 2 rounds after Zach Charbonnet, and I need a different position outside of running back, maybe that's my opportunity to go for some sort of value type of situation is all, because they offer you slight difference things. So the nice thing about Zach Charbonnet is if he gets that starting role, he's going to be very good. But I don't know that that's any different for Rachaad White, right? If there's an injury in front of him. Once again, going back to Zach Charbonnet, what I will say, we do feel like there's a higher chance of injury in front of him because Kenneth Walker has not had a very good injury history. So other things to think about. This is not all inclusive. This list is not in some perfect order here as we go through it. Then Dylan Sampson, Justice Hill, Raheem Mostert, Jordan James. All guys who are coming out of this group as values that you can get quite late. Dylan Sampson, I'm sure that this ADP is going to be going up. How much it ends up going up, we will see. But currently, this is the ADP that we're working with for this information. And so he definitely came out as a potential value. He graded high on the upside, but the guarantee of that upside being anything, no guarantee. Quinshon Judkins can come back at some point, and Jerome Ford could be the starter to start the season, as they have said is the case right now, but we'll see. There is some talent in Dylan Sampson that could translate to the NFL. Justice Hill, high floor guy, and if he were to get the starting job in Baltimore, I'd say if Derrick Henry goes down, I do think he gets the starting job. I don't think he gets the same workload as Derrick Henry, but he's also a good receiving back. He has some enough juice that he can break plays. There's just a lot to like about Justice Hill, but I should say, and in an inclusion to that, you don't want him as your 1 or 2 running back necessarily for 0 RB, but as a backup option to have available, he's a pretty good option. He gets work each week. Raheem Mostert's in a nice situation. If there's an injury that it seems like he's probably, and the community agrees, the next man up. And if he is, and he gets to be the running back on a Pete Carroll offense for several weeks, he's probably going to be valuable. Especially since now he's older, but if you're only asking him to do it for a few weeks, he can come out and provide a nice little, a spark, we'll say, not necessarily for the running game, but his own spark. And then Jordan James is a guy who I have a little bit more, obviously, if he were to get the starting job in San Francisco due to any kind of injury in front of him, I think that that's very good, and I'm not so sure that Isaac Guerendo for sure takes the lead running back role if Christian McCaffrey goes down. So that's where he just kind of crept into the back of this group. And part of the reason, too, it's just faith that the San Francisco running back role has always been produced good running backs, even if they're, running backs that don't do anything else in the league after they're done being the starting running back there for 4 weeks before they, too, get injured. Now we're going to get into the territory where we are talking about guys who I'm actually going to fade. The guys who are being taken rounds earlier than a lot of the other guys in this same strength score area here. So looking at this group of guys who you can vaguely see I have surrounded here. And the players taken at the top of this group are Tyjae Spears, Braylon Allen, Isaac Guerendo, where I've explained my concern, but of course there is significant upside there, but you can see some of my subjectiveness in how I view that backfield also coming through and ultimately coming through here. Tank Bigsby, Rico Dowdle, also, even if they become the starting running back for Jacksonville, for Carolina, how high is that upside ultimately? I'm not so sure on that. And for a guy like Tank Bigsby, there is some competition there. I'm not so sure he's for sure the RB2. If there is an injury that were to happen in front of him there. For Braylon Allen, I definitely agree that there is very good upside, but I don't know that anything is guaranteed just based on the fact that he actually got used less throughout last season, and the other running back that they drafted later than him in last year's draft actually his role was increasing. I can't think of his name off the top of my head. He probably is somewhere in this list. But that's, to me, a little bit of a sign of concern. And then for Tyjae Spears, I might have been a little too tough on him here, but also, I don't know. I think he probably belonged in this group. We're going to ignore the Tyjae Spears. I think I was just a little bit tough on him when I went through his grading. And that happened with some of these guys, because of the situation, I was a little bit tougher on them, or maybe I didn't knock somebody else as poorly. But that's going to bring us on to this last group, and I would say, heavy avoids are going to be Bashal Tutin and Jalen Wright for me. I think they're just going a little bit too early for very unguaranteed types of situations. And for Jalen Wright, based on his performance last season, it was very much not good. Of course, there is an opportunity there, but they also drafted Ollie Gordon. So, there's some concern. There is some concern. You can see I almost am expecting Ollie Gordon to be the number 2 running back there, essentially. But I do think it's pretty much a toss-up. So, this scoring difference might not quite be fair between Ollie and Jalen Wright. Nonetheless, you can get Ollie Gordon undrafted and Jalen Wright in the 13th round, not even at the end of your draft. So, there you go. I think you had a chance to kind of look through the list in the order that they came up here, and I hope that you got something from this if you're planning on going 0 RB, or to help you strategize going 0 RB, or even this could be something where if running backs go heavy and early in your draft, and you wanted this to be available, or you just remember some of this information, you could pull from this and change up your strategy and then go 0 RB. Because the best strategy is no strategy in your fantasy football drafts. That's it. Thank you very much for tuning on in. Hope you like it. If you have any video ideas, topics you want me to cover, let me know. Bye-bye. Oh, I should plug. Real quick. Tuesdays, Thursdays, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Last week, Thursday, something came up and it did not happen. But Tuesdays and Thursdays should be here live on YouTube doing mock drafts on Sleeper, so please come and join us. It's been a good time, and it's good practice, and the more of us are there, the better it gets. Bye-bye.